morning. Good morning, everybody. This morning, sorry, no video. I will go straight, nothing fun. We'll go straight to the presentation. I hope it's not going to be too boring, but I will try my best. So first of all, I will talk about the context of safety in the fisheries. And we have always to keep in mind that safety is not something which is dictated. It's something which is completely related to the context of the specific industry. And any industry has a different context. And this context will determine how we develop or not fisheries regulation and how we implement or not fisheries regulation and enforce them or not. So the context really matters. And the context of fisheries is not very favorable for safety, unfortunately. It's a context where the fish is first, which is creating a lot of difficulties. So I like this quotation here because this quotation recalls the mindset of fisheries and the mindset, I would say, of the global society of about how fishing people, fish folks have to be treated, saying that if they're dying, that's completely normal. You remember yesterday we talked about this normalization of death, normalization of accident. And it's very much in this culture that we have in fisheries and in the society in general, that being a fisher means you may die going at sea. This is the fate of anybody going at sea. This quotation is from a very interesting report which was done in 2001 with some researchers from Iceland, and after the work they've been doing in Iceland to increase the safety, and they've been very successful in increasing the safety in Iceland. And if I have time and if you want, maybe we can discuss a little bit. And Mundur is here and he knows already quite a lot about that. But the case is extremely interesting, how they have been successful in stopping this, basically. In stopping this idea that, okay, it's going to happen. We don't do anything. It's going to happen. It's God's will. And in fact, we can do a lot of things. The problem is nearly everywhere we have this mindset in fisheries. Not only in West Africa, anywhere in the world. You find it, and they had it the same way in Iceland in the 1990s, but they have been able to combat it by involving the communities as a whole, not only the fishers, not trying to force them to do things, but working with them, working with the community slowly by slowly. It has been a very proactive work from the administration and the government. So the mindset is a big issue, the mindset of people. There is also the idea that in fisheries, fish is always first. The catch is always first. The rest doesn't really matter. What is important is to bring the fish, to sell it to the market, and for the population to have some food. That's the only thing mattering. The rest is not so important. And we can see that it has a lot of consequences. Fisheries management usually do not consider safety at all. In the big fisheries management from RFMOs, and it's very new that it's starting to be considered in the Pacific Ocean, in ICAT. Now there is some idea to consider the safety aspect, but it's very new. Here, this is some of the elements which are from 2001, the same report. But what is interesting, in 2016, there have been a full report on fisheries management and safety. It's 2016 that we start to question the safety aspect in fishery. 2016. It's very new. Before 2016, the safety of the fishers was absolutely not considered by the person involved in fisheries management. 2016, what is 9 years ago? And it's only in the research report. So it means the time for this research report to convince the fisheries managers to change their attitude towards safety and respecting the fisher's life, it's probably going to take some time. 2016 that we start to consider safety in fisheries management practice. This is an FAO paper, very interesting one. Another element, regulators and owners determine the fishing vessel safety elements from shore. The regulators will decide what are the elements to apply on the ship. The ship fishing vessel owners also, without being the one exposed to the risks. So you have here a gap between the one deciding what safety should be for the people at sea and the people at sea who do not have a word to say about what should be safety and the way they can see safety. So there is also this big gap between who decides safety and who has to be protected. And I like this simple quotation from the ILO Director General. I think it's reminding what is really at stake. What is really at stake in safety? This is what is at stake. It's a life of people. And for the different group is different things which are at stake. If there is no safety, for ship owners it's just a financial loss, and which is very often compensated by insurance schemes. So the loss is even compensated. So at the end of the day, it's not a big problem. For the regulators, if there is people dying at sea often, eventually it's a political problem, but it's happening far away. Nobody listens to the people when they are dying there. And you don't record, so you don't know. So the problem, political problem, is completely inexistent. But for the people on the sea, that's a different story. Safety means life or death. That's simple as it is. So in this kind of context, fish first, mindset, differences between the one exposed to the risks and the one deciding for the operation, no surprise, we have very high rate of death. You've seen this slide yesterday. I think it's probably good to remember again what it means, this slide. So here I took, it's a little bit different than the one of yesterday. This one is for developed countries. I like this one. It's simple to remember. Onshore, 10 times more chance to die when you are in shipping sector, 100 times more chance to die if you are in the fishing sector. And in some developing countries, 1,000 times more chance to die than if you are in any job. So this is the reality of fisheries. And this is the reality with the data we have, which is very incomplete. And as we discussed yesterday, also one of the issues that we have in fisheries is the incapacity, or I would say probably the unwillingness of the states to collect data. There is very few countries which are collecting accurate data, so we don't really know. We're in a sector when there is no data, no proper information. If we don't have this information, there will be no action. That's perfect. We maintain a social status quo. We just keep the people dying at sea. Safety is just ignored. So what we know, the global numbers are only estimated. Many states do not monitor, but there is a very high fatality. That's the basics of what we know. How high it is, it's very difficult to know because nothing is monitored, nothing is checked. We don't even know who are the people going to sea every day. And this is one of the elements which is very interesting in the C188. If you remember yesterday, we talked about the C188, the ILO convention C188. At least with the C188, you will have, before the departure of the ship, you will have to provide a crew list. So if the people are dying, at least you will know who disappeared. The names of the person, the number of the persons. Today, in most of the countries, you don't even know who is going out at sea. That's terrible for the families. That's terrible. So the estimates, there have been different estimates since the 1990s, basically, when the big organizations tried to provide numbers to something in a completely unknown environment. So it's very complicated to provide numbers in an unknown environment. And this is what is coming in the recent years. 24,000 per year, 32,000 per year, 100 plus thousand per year. We don't exactly know, but it's huge numbers. Whatever the number, they are really, really, really big. Okay? So this is a situation of safety at sea. It has a cost. Of course, people are losing their life. People are being disabled, losing arms, hands, legs. This is also a common fate. It has an impact on families. It has an impact on communities of fishers. And also it has an impact on the know-how, on the transmission from population to population. And here, one of the elements which was interesting when we had the discussion some years ago with Arid Gudmundsson from Iceland about how they have been able to successfully modify the mindset of the population in Iceland, because it was the same thing in Iceland. People were dying. It looks like it was normalized, but they started to talk with the families, with the wives, with the kids, and saying, you also have to push your husband to do things better, to start really engaging. And by engaging the woman and having, of course, the support of the state to provide some equipment, to provide some guidance, it created a dynamics. And after the women and the family were saying to their husband, you cannot go at sea as you were doing before. Now, don't forget to take your life jacket. Oh, you're leaving this morning at 5 o'clock. Don't forget the life jacket here. Don't forget your radio communication system. Don't forget that. Take it. And this pressure from the family saying, I don't want you to die. It was very successful in making it. All the attempts which were made before on saying, you must take this by the authority, by the government, were failing. But when started to have the family pressure, the peer pressure, suddenly, oh, I'm listening to my wife because I want to make sure my wife will not be in a situation of misery and my kids will be survival, and I have to listen to my wife. So it was very interesting to see that the dynamics of the family has been a very big trigger for the improvement of safety in this country. It's a very interesting example. So these are the human costs, and how also through the families, the relatives, you can do something. How the communities can also, at a very small level, saying, we have to ensure the perpetuation of the community and not having many people dying. We can imagine the disaster when you have a canoe with 15 people sinking from exactly the same village. 15 people between 20 and 40. That's terrible for the village. So that's all these elements of the families and the community, which is important. Economic and social cost, of course. This is also for the injuries, unavailability, cost, etc. And who is gonna pay, compensate for that? And when you have an injured brother, I know that here you don't have injured sister at sea because it looks like it's complicated relationship with the gender at sea in Ghana, but it can happen in some other countries. When the person is coming back from sea without a hand, without a leg, what is the consequences? It's not only the loss for the family in terms of capacity to earn money, but it's also how to take care of this person for the long term, how to ensure medical assistance, medical support, and all the costs that it involves for the families and the community. So it's extremely important to ensure that safety is higher, not only for the people to survive, but the families to continue being in a better health. And of course, environmental costs. And here this is due to the equipment which are on board, which can be also damageful to the environment. So knowing to improve, one thing to improve anything in safety, if you want to improve something in safety, you need to know the problem that you are dealing with. If you don't know the problem, you cannot improve. If you don't know where are coming most of the accidents, how are you to improve the safety regulation? Which safety regulations you need to support? If you remember, I will come back to this interesting presentation by the Korean Coast Guard. What we were seeing in the presentation, most of the accidents presented in the Korean Coast Guard in 2024 and 2025 were capsize of fishing vessels. If you know that, you know the problem is very much stability and design of the ships. This is very clear. It's a design problem here. If you have systematically capsize of the vessels, and it looks at the biggest cause of accidents in Korean waters, in the Korean fishing vessel fleet, it means the government, if they want to address the problem, has to focus on this capsize story. But if you don't know what happened to the ship at sea, how can you address the problem? And to know that this capsize was happening at sea, you need to record. So it means to be registered. And this is where the Korean Coast Guard was reporting, investigating, and proposing recommendations to the government of Korea. So this is how you can progress. They were the same case with Spain. In the early 2000s, Spain came with small boat size, a very special design. And suddenly the Spanish administration realized that these ships were always capsizing. They modified the regulation for design of the vessel. But if you don't monitor what's happening in your fleet, in your fishing vessel fleet, you will never notice the problem. You will never address the good problem. So it's important to have a proper reporting investigation to improve. Knowledge is extremely important. Knowledge of what's happening. Building a strong capacity to monitor the reality of what's happening at sea, the reality. So working with fishers, working with fishing boat owners, working with fishing boat builders, it's very important. Knowing what's happening, understanding, to provide an appropriate response. A response which is matching the problem, not a response which is very theoretical. Something matching the problem. So now we'll just be a little bit probably more theoretical on the idea of risks and safety. To make it simple, safety is basically the capacity to mitigate risks, okay? When there are risks, we need to address the risks to be more safe, and this is how we're going to try to develop some measures, okay? So here this is looks very complicated. Looks very complicated framework, but you will see it's very simple. Basically, it's divided in two parts. First of all is to be able to assess the problem, to look at the problem and to see how much these hazards can become a reality and what will be the consequences. So for example, on the fishing vessel, you can have a fire, which is related to a lot of fuel, for example, on board. You can have a fire, ignition fire, okay? That is my hazard identification, the fire. Is my ship exposed to fire? Yes, I'm using a lot of fuel, using different components, paper, whatever components which can burn easily. Even the nets can burn. How much chance I have on my ship for a fire to happen? Maybe high chance, maybe lower chance. But the idea is what I will do next. I can estimate the problem. Fire is a problem. It can happen. If it happens, there will be consequences. I will lose the boat. Maybe I will lose some life. Maybe I will have people injured. So I know this is something. In this respect, after the assessment of the problem, I have to develop safety measures, risk mitigation measures, safety measures. And this is where the problem starts. The identification of hazards is pretty easy. Collision, heavy weather, fire, capsizing, pretty easy. And now, which response are we going to give? There is a theoretical response. Okay, we build a ship on steel with specific device, very high fire detection system, very high fire prevention. But here we are talking about costs, because any development of risk mitigation measures has cost implication, high cost. It costs a lot of money. And this is where we start to have a problem. Who is gonna pay this cost? And what will be the consequences of this cost on the operation of the ship and on the industry? Does the industry want to pay the cost? Does the government want to pay the cost? Who's paying this cost? Safety at the cost, we have to be very clear. There is no safety without investment. It does not exist. You need to pay, okay? Safety, securities are very clear. They have a cost implication. Now, the problem starts. Who is going to pay for safety? We are in fishing. And in fishing, nobody really wants to pay for safety. And in fishing, there is also one advantage of not paying for safety and not investing for fishing. There is very few regulation which are imposed. And when there is no regulation, there is no possibilities to move on. So the risk mitigation, and here that's more the problems of this system. Okay, this is where we are. We can identify the risks very easy. Now we have to find the proper response, considering the means of the communities, considering the means and the capacity of the communities, but also the willingness of the state to take action and support it. Regulate and support, both are going hand in hand. You remember the case of what we discussed with Iceland. The government was part of it, not only trying to organize this discussion, but invested also in equipment, in people. They took time and effort and money. So this is the working together which is important. So risk in fishing, in short, so I will go very fast. First of all, I will go to a very simple principle. As far as I know, I am not a fish. As far as I know, most probably you are not fish also. So our living environment is definitely not the ocean. Our living environment is on land. Okay, so when we are extracted from our natural habitat, we're in a very high situation of stress and risk of death. Any creature is living within a special habitat, okay? You take a whale, you put it at sea, the whale will not be very happy, yeah? This is the same for us. So in order for ensuring a survival at sea, we need to have certain number of devices. And for us, the device that will ensure your survival at sea is what we call the ship and all the equipment within the ship that would maintain your survival, because we are not from the ocean. We can claim that we are from the ocean because we go in the ocean a lot, but we're definitely not fish, huh? Definitely. Eh? We are not marine mammals, we are not that. We are human beings who are made to be on land. So the sea, by default, is a high-risk environment, very clearly. And the only way of surviving at sea is to have a safe haven, a ship which is safe for us to protect us from the hazards to sea, but also an environment which is protecting us from the hazard from the ship. Because the ship itself can contain hazards. Fishing gears can be hazardous. Okay? Engines can be hazardous. All the machinery can be hazardous. Okay? So, this is where we are. Thinking about that is very simple and very important. Very basics. Exposure to hazards, I would say there are different categories of hazards. I will call the exogenous hazards, so one from the outside of the ships. Here we have few things. Piracy is one very serious hazard. We have also the environment itself, the seas, the geography, grounding is a problem, rocks, whatever. There's many related hazards to that. These were the one from the outside, and there are the hazards from the inside, from the fish operation itself is hazardous. The equipment is hazardous, the machinery, everything that you have on board the vessel can be hazardous. And there is a specificity here of any ship. It's the size. It's the size. Ship is small, usually. Everything is inside, and you cannot go outside. You don't have space. So when you are exposed to heavy machinery, you are just exposed this distance. You are not like you're in a factory where you can have distance with things. You are very, very confined space all the time. If you go on a industrial fishing vessel, semi-industrial fishing vessel, you will see everything is super narrow, closed, and you are very exposed to anything all the time. You have the same thing on cargo ships. You are exposed to this physical reality all the time. So your risks are very high. And in fishing, you also have the risk related to the catch itself. The fishing gears, they are also problematic. So there's multitude of risks. And the fishers, they are definitely the best person to know these risks. They all know them. That's not a problem. We were talking yesterday about education. Fishers know much better than anybody is. Much, much better. They know exactly. They can make a list. The problem after is, after identifying this, everything, say, how we can prevent it to happen. And this is where safety enters into the equation, and the cost at the core of it. So safety is a social response to risks. Okay? So safety measure the intent to mitigate risks. The intent, the social intent to mitigate the risks. Safety is addressed very differently in different sectors, completely differently, and we're going to talk about that because it's extremely important. Safety in an industry, and I see my friend Seth, and there will be some question for you, Seth. Be ready. The idea of the intent. Safety is the intent of a society to address a problem. And you will see the intent can be very different from sector to sector. Before becoming technical, organizational, human, it's a safety, is a choice of the society. Do we want it? Do we want to secure the life of people, the life of this industry, or we don't want? Do we want to secure this activity, or we don't want as a society? Because at the end of the day, fisheries, any operation at sea, is a human activity. And any human activity can be addressed by social reform, social changes. So we can address. So what to protect? What do we want to protect? Do we want to protect only the catch, the resource, or do we also want to protect the people? What is the objective of safety? And how much do we want to invest in the safety of people versus the safety of the vessel, versus the safety of the environment? How much effort do we want to invest? So in short, risk control measures, so safety, is negotiated. And you can see very often in some of the discussion about safety in fisheries, and I remember a very interesting report from the 1990s in the US, and the US Coast Guard highlighting said, yeah, the fishers, they don't want safety. Fishermen don't want safety? No, they don't want to pay for safety. That's a different story. They want to safeguard the life of their people. And who were the people saying that fishermen don't want safety? It were the fishing vessel owners, because they are the one to pay it. And they don't want to pay, okay? So, resource, social acceptance are very important for safety. So safety, usually we classify safety measured in 3 different categories. What we called, all this is included into the society itself. The human, the investment on people, the investment on design and equipment, and investment on organizations. So usually safety is the combination of all this. If you have one failing, the rest is failing. So it's how all this works together that will enhance safety of a system. There is another very important element in safety, is what we call the feedback. So if there is something which is not working, or which is failing, or an accident, you report, you investigate the problem, you improve. Feedback mechanism. And when we don't know what's happening in fisheries, we don't have feedback. How can we improve anything if we don't know what's happening? We can't. So these are some basics of how to do an investigation. You will see an investigation, at least a basic investigation. It's not very complicated. Say, who was injured? What happened? Where did it happen? When did it happen? What happened at the time of the accident? How the accident occurred? Why did the accident occur? Wow, how complicated it is, huh? Super simple, very simple. It's just requiring a little bit of investment and manpower to conduct that, to collect the data and to process the data. And here, a little bit more political willingness to address the problem after, which is, at the end of the day, what we have to do. Okay, responsibility for safety at sea. I will go in two different parts. Who is responsible for safety at sea? Flag state, coastal state, port state. So, you know this notion, flag state, coastal state, port state, and the attribution. We're going to see a little bit. Who is responsible from the state perspective for safety at sea? From the state perspective, there is a flag state. The flag state is responsible for the ship and its operation at sea. This is the flag state responsibility. So the flag state is here to monitor what's happening and improve the situation if they want. Again, if they want. If they want to invest in safety. And here the idea is to consider the design of the ship, the equipment, the training of people, the type of operation, how to process operation, the response to risks, what are you going to do with the equipment, how you're going to protect the equipment environment, etc., for example. The different risks from the outside. We talked yesterday and the last week that, for example, the weather forecast is not something which is considered by fishers. Wow. What a story, huh? I worked 20 years at sea. And in 20 years, the first thing I was doing before operating my vessel, going at sea and choosing my route where I was going from A to B, was looking at the weather. What's going to happen to me within these 2 weeks? And not having this simple information, I mean, that's terrible, huh? That's terrible. Not giving this single information, which is available everywhere in the world for free today to fishers. Not providing easy access to fishers, I think that's a big problem to address very soon in all your communities, in your countries. Providing these very basics of weather forecast for the next few days. It's super simple. You can find it everywhere. Extremely easy. It must be done. And after you have fishing vessel safety, so the design, and you have consideration for the occupational safety and health for the crew safety. Here, this is a little bit what we discussed yesterday with the C188. After, there is another dimension of safety. It's what we call the safety of navigation. So one thing is ship safety. You take care of the ship itself, the unit. And after, the ship within its maritime context. So I say, safety of navigation is to make sure that the navigation in these waters are safe for the ships. Okay, so basically you need to know the depths of the area, you need to know, you have some landmarks, etc. So how you monitor the area to have something which is safe to operate, or at least as a fisher or seafarer, you know the areas where you have dangers. So you can identify them and you can avoid them. So this is a knowledge. So there are many elements, I will not go through them all. You have also in this coastal state responsibilities the idea of search and rescue. So the capacity to go and help people. And also some other elements which are very important. One, which is a port state control inspection regime, how the ports can be used as the location for verifying the safety of the ships. Inspectors in the port can go, visit, do something, verify, question, ask for improvement. And another important element, which is covering here flag, port, and coastal state responsibility, is the idea of casualty investigation in general of problems. So here, these are some of the elements which are in the code of conduct. And usually they are the elements which are completely forgotten, even if the code of conduct is applying and is clearly in probably all the countries today. And these elements, you find them in the code of conduct, but they are probably very low after in the application of the code of conduct in national framework. But you see here, health and safety standard. Of course it should, there is no obligation. If you don't want, you don't do. And basically in the code of conduct, what became a must is more the idea of how we can manage a resource. But this should health and safety of standard, forget that, it's not important. Flag state compliance with safety requirement, it's not important. Port state, forget it. Resource management important, Resource management important. Of course, people which are in charge of fisheries management are people who are basically scientists, which are been working all their life on fisheries dynamics, and bureaucrats. That's not important. What's important is fish, food safety. This one doesn't care, you know. Okay, but you see it inside, huh? Here's another element. This is some of the publication of the FAO, ILO on safety. These are voluntary guidelines, and you can see the same idea. Collective responsibility, and the idea also of collective responsibility. States, owners, keepers, and fishers. You always find this idea of collective responsibility in the ILO documentations. For example, any ILO C188 will also highlight the responsibility of the state to address it. So, responsibility for safety at sea, owners, keepers. This is for my friend Seth. You know what it is, Seth? Can you reply the question? Does the boss of these people take care of their safety?
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So, generically, safety of a system is determined by the owner. And so, if the behavior or the function of the system does not depict safety practices, then the owner in reality or the boss in reality does not prioritize safety as number one. Maybe it's revenue, it could be another thing that is what his number one priority is. For the specific photo in question, yes, I take care of the safety of my guys. Thank you.
I think you even know these people.
Yes.
So we can see here, and this is the picture from Ghana. And this morning, Francis sent me a small video about Senegalese Navy intervention. And you can see the Senegalese Navy, they are the same thing. So you can see the level of safety in navies, Ghana, Senegal, is pretty high. They really take care of their people. Safety is very important. It's not only having guns, it's also taking care of their people. This one. If these people ask the question, does my boss take care of me, of my safety? That's a different story, yeah? That's a different answer. Why? Why is it so different? Why? Why is it so different? I mean, we are in the same country, yeah? We are in the same country, both pictures from the same country. Why is it so different? Yes, miss, please.
So I'll say for the second picture, the boss himself doesn't take care of his safety, much less that of the workers. And then also there are no structures to govern safety, but in the first picture there are structures. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, one more.
I just want to point something out. It may not be very obvious, but the photo on the left shows people who have to do two functions. First one to be safe and secured. So it's a security operation, but they are wearing life vests, life jackets. The red straps are hazardous duty life jackets, so they inflate on water contact. Underneath that, they are wearing ballistic vests that reduce impact of bullets. So safety is highly prioritized with helmets and all that. And on the right, clearly, there is nothing to protect the individual. So just another point to show the disparities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will just summarize a little bit what you said, and in probably a different types of terms. So I would say that the picture here, it's Navy. So it's a state-owned system. And the idea of the Navy is to protect its people's safety in order for them to fulfill their security mission. So the idea is, if you don't have safety in the Navy for the people, they will be unable to complete their security mission. And it makes sense. I mean, if they have to fight to war with a Navy vessel and the Navy ship is sinking before they arrive to the location of the battle, it's completely useless. So they have a very high level of safety because they want to perform a specific mission. Okay? On the other hand, what is the finality of this operation here is to generate income. And everybody know that if you want to generate income by catching fish, you generate income, profits. If you want to increase your profit margin, you have to decrease your operation costs, okay? And this is where the state is very important. There is nothing wrong in saying that. This is a reality of both owners. They want to generate profits as this is their activity. This is the capitalist venture. This is what they are doing. But this is where the role of the state is very important, as Miss was highlighting. If the state doesn't put boundaries, it means the state is okay with that situation. And there is nothing wrong for them to try to work like that because it's authorized by the state. The day the state will decide that they have to provide at least, maybe not the bulletproof jacket, but at least a life jacket to the fishers, the vessel owner will definitely comply with it. They will comply with it if the regulation exists, if they are properly enforced. Okay, so that's very important to see the objective, so finality of the system. One is for profit, the other one is for security of the country. So two different finality. The owners are different with different objectives. And this is where the role of the state is very important in regulating. And we can see that here the state does not consider the life of these people the same way at the end of the day. These people from the same country do not have the same value in front of the state. Okay? Some for security, they have a certain value, and some for profit and food security, which is also important, have a different value. And probably closing the gap would probably be interesting. And here, this is a responsibility of the state to do that. Regulation, support system, as we discussed before, it's possible, like it happened in Iceland. So here I go something else. Why does another industry, like the air industry, much better in terms of safety performance than fishing and ferries? And here I just give like three small things. I mean, very, very, very small, like three small extracts. I took them, they have less than a month. This is death in fisheries. It's happening in the United States, it's last week. This is here a very interesting case, is capsize of a fishing vessel in Ghana. Everybody was safe, but still a capsize. How can it happen? It's a problem of safety or design of the vessel and operation. And here, a ferry in Nigeria where a lot of people died, also last week. So this is what happened. Okay? I would say it's happening every week, every month, when it's reported, and it's not always reported. And it's not only happening in Africa, as you see, some is happening in the United States. So it's across the board. But why it's not happening like this in the air sector? Do you have any guess? Because the air sector, at the end of the day, is also a for-profit system. It's like the fisheries, it's like the ferries. It's for-profit system, the aviation system. Why the aviation system is able to have a better safety performance? Do you have any guess? Yes?
Every single time an aircraft is about to fly, they do a thorough safety check. Yeah. And when it lands to, immediately they do same. Standard-wise, if they neglect, fine, but by tradition, they hardly fail to do that.
Okay, there is systematic consideration for safety at any departure of the aircraft, but more than that, what is the idea? More than that. It's an industry, yes, please.
What happens at sea stays at sea. The visibility is, of course, totally different. A statement. Okay. So if a vessel sinks 100 meters from the coast, yeah, and nobody is willing to report or willing to investigate, basically society doesn't care.
Okay, so this is the idea of spreading the information, that finally the accident at sea, we don't spread very much information, so there is no reaction from the public. Yes and no, we know it's here. Huh? We see the information is coming. Does it really trigger something?
No.
No, we probably have to go a little bit beyond that and probably ask ourselves, do you think they are the same person in this boat in Nigeria and the people on the KLM flight? Do you think they are the same person?
Aircrafts are usually operated and used by a relatively higher class of people in society, elite, by vessels, especially fishing vessels. We all know the most ordinary grassroots person in the most remote or relatively excluded community.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we're seeing here, there's protection of aviation, because basically aviation from its start, it's carrying rich people, powerful people. If you take any president of any of our nations, are they taking this ferry from Nigeria to go to one place to another one? Or are they taking the airplane? They're taking the airplane. So they want to make sure that when they are taking an airplane, the airplane never crash, never crash. So when you have a debate in any of our countries about safety of aviation, it's no problem. It will be taken very seriously by the parliamentarians, by the ministries, because they know that one day they will be inside. But the same person, they will never be, ever, on a fishing vessel. Never. And what they want is to eat fish very cheap. So they want to make sure the people which are catching fish are not paid so much, safety is pretty poor, because they want cheap stuff. But they are the same persons, which they want for their life, that's a different story. So this is very much a social problem here. Huh? The protection of the rich with aviation, no protection for the poor. We have also to think this into these terms. Huh? Okay? So, responsibility in the C188. It's good to think a little bit more. Huh? Responsibility in C188. Fishing vessel operator, basically, owner, has the overall responsibility and must provide to the skipper the resources. The skipper has the responsibility for the fishers and the operation, the safety of operation. And the skipper shall not be constrained by fishing vessel owner from taking any decision necessary for safety. That's important, the independence of the skipper towards safety. And the fisher shall comply with lawful orders applicable. So this is the theory that you have in the C188 about the responsibility of the different persons. So the idea in general, from regulator state to fishers, all stakeholders are directly concerned by it. Okay? Safety and cost. There is a big tension between safety and cost. Safety, again, has a cost, and nobody wants to pay it when we're in a profit-making industry. Nobody wants to pay. So here, this is what we call tension in shipbuilding from the building stage. If you don't have proper safety regulations, the design of the ship will be low because the priority is the income. There will be reduction of the space. Everything which is not for production system will be reduced. Okay? Safety equipment will be limited because it's expensive. This is where the regulations are important in order to safeguard the ship design. In operation, it's the same thing. The fishing operation objectives are to increase profit, maximizing the value, the catch of value fish, of course. If you catch high value fish, you will get more return. And also reducing operational expenses. This is a simple logic of where we are. And if we are not able as a society to develop safety measures, as we have been able to develop safety measures in the aviation sector, it's going to be complicated for the future in fisheries. So rules for design and operation reduce owner's freedom, but strengthen ship safety. And the state involvement is absolutely vital. It's absolutely vital. The state must take its share of the problem by issuing regulation, following regulation, supporting owners, supporting fishers. The state has to demonstrate what they are doing. And the importance of feedback is extremely clear. We need to know what's happening in order to improve things. Okay? I go faster because I'm late. But okay, so now I will talk about the safety regulations. What are the instruments that we have in the fisheries sector? So we have a different instrument, but first of all, we have to consider that instruments that we have are addressing specific problems in the sector, in the maritime sector, fishing sector. So first of all, we have instruments which are dedicated to the vessel design. The ship design and the construction of the ship is paramount, absolutely paramount, because this is where, on this platform, that the people will operate. If the platform is unsafe, it's going to be clearly an accident. And this is what we've seen with the picture on the capsize of the ships last week. Platform which is capsizing, it means there is a systematic problem of design in terms of operation. If we don't have this right from the beginning, all the rest will fail at one point. After, we need safety guidance for the vessel operation and the management of safety. And we need some specific training of the people, and also to consider the working conditions, meaning that making sure that the seafarers or the fishers' human factors are respected. So it means they can work always in the best mode. What is applicable today? So here I will go for the generic, mandatory, and binding regulations. So this one, PSMA, is more about the fish, but the interesting element with the PSMA, it allows inspectors to visit ships. So it doesn't prevent the inspectors to look a little bit more than the fish. They can look at things around, okay? And you know, you can give this information to the marine inspectors, to the port state control officers. For example, there is something which is very clear and very simple. You have a foreign vessel coming, you're a PSMA inspector, you visit normally, your scope is the fish, you can observe that the condition of the vessel are not good, you can call somebody from the maritime administration saying, I have some suspicion about the quality in general of this ship. Can you look if some of the elements which are in your attributions, which apply on fishing vessel, are not a problem there? MARPOL Annex 1, MARPOL Annex 5. You can probably find interesting things. We had this discussion with our friend from Senegal. On va peut-être passer en français un peu. Hein? Okay, we're switching to French, if you can take your headset. Je vous avais oublié, les amis, je suis désolé. Mais là, je repense Sénégal, c'est pour ça. Parce qu'on parlait de ça pour le Sénégal, par exemple, il disait qu'il y avait des bateaux qui transportaient du fuel dans les cales où après ils allaient transporter des poissons. Ça, c'est très intéressant d'un point de vue non seulement de contamination et de sécurité alimentaire, mais aussi d'un point de vue environnemental. C'est clairement des violations, hein. Là, on est très clair, hein. Et ça peut vous donner tout à fait le pouvoir de vérifier. Même si le poisson semble bien, etc. Peut-être que ça a été bien lavé, les caisses, je ne sais pas. On se dit, mais qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait de cette eau-là qu'ils ont lavée, quand ils ont lavé leur fuel? Qu'est-ce qu'ils en ont fait? Donc ça, c'est des claires violations de MARPOL. Donc on voit qu'il peut y avoir une synergie. Et en fait, c'est pour ça que c'est intéressant le PSMA, et on peut le classer quelque part s'il y a une volonté réelle des inspecteurs qui travaillent là et qui travaillent avec des inspecteurs plus traditionnels du maritime, de faire quelque chose. Après, il y a les conventions. Donc, oui, j'ai marqué entry into force. Hein, donc, c'est entrée en vigueur. Entry into force. Donc, ça, c'est rentré en vigueur en 2016, ça en 2017. Donc, c'est la convention 188 qu'on a vue hier, hein, sur le travail, et qui a des des provisions, donc des éléments qui sont liés à la sécurité des travailleurs. Après, il y a la convention STCWF, donc qui s'intéresse à la formation des pêcheurs et à la certification des pêcheurs. Donc ça, c'est en vigueur depuis 2012. Et puis, il y a le Cape Town Agreement. Alors, le Cape Town Agreement, c'est une longue histoire qui date de 1977, où en 1977, il y a eu l'idée de faire une convention sur la sécurité des navires de pêche. Et depuis 1977, c'était la Convention de Torremolinos, le protocole en 97, et c'est toujours pas entré en vigueur. Ce qui est intéressant, hein, c'est un instrument qui a presque 50 ans maintenant. Ça fait 50 ans qu'on essaie de mettre des normes de sécurité dans la pêche, et ça fait 50 ans qu'on n'y arrive pas au niveau international. Donc c'est assez intéressant, et je trouve que c'est assez symbolique, et ça illustre bien le problème qu'a la pêche à accepter la mise en place de normes dans son secteur. Donc voilà les instruments qui sont obligatoires. On va aller assez rapidement. Donc ce qui s'applique, on voit aussi ce qui s'applique sur les navires cargo, il y en a beaucoup plus d'instruments que sur les navires de pêche. On voit très clairement qu'il y a beaucoup plus d'instruments, mais il faut toujours prendre en considération les instruments liés en fait à la pollution des navires. Et c'est ça qui peut vous donner du pouvoir dans la vérification des navires de pêche étrangers. Quand ils viennent dans vos ports, c'est travailler, quand vous avez le PSMA, travailler avec des administrateurs des affaires maritimes pour vous donner un accès et pouvoir vérifier autre chose. Et donc étendre l'opération. Mais on voit très bien qu'il y a quand même une distinction très importante. Le Cape Town Agreement, donc on va aller rapidement, en fait, parce qu'il va y avoir une présentation complète par vidéo de notre collègue Miguel Núñez, du gouvernement espagnol. Donc en fait, il s'occupe du design des navires, donc c'est vraiment l'idée du Cape Town Agreement, c'est qu'il va y avoir des navires de qualité. Hein, c'est ça l'idée. Dès le départ, on s'intéresse aux navires de qualité, on s'intéresse à la communication, on s'intéresse aux procédures d'urgence, on s'intéresse vraiment à une opération un peu plus poussée des navires, plus dans ce qui se passe, c'est très similaire avec ce qui se passe avec SOLAS pour les cargos. Hein. Toujours pas entré en vigueur, peut-être que ça va rentrer en vigueur, nous espérons, parce que c'est quand même quelque chose qui attend depuis 1977. Donc ça fait quand même très longtemps qu'il y a une tentative de la part de l'OMI de faire entrer en vigueur une réglementation sur la sécurité des navires de pêche. N'oublions pas que la sécurité des navires de pêche a aussi des conséquences sur les États, sur les administrations, parce que quand il y a des opérations de recherche et de sauvetage, pour la plupart, comme nous l'ont montré aussi nos amis coréens, pour la plupart, ça se passe sur des navires de pêche. Donc on voit très bien que la pêche a un coût aussi énorme en termes de responsabilité, de déploiement des responsabilités de l'État côtier, et donc des forces mises en œuvre par l'État côtier. Donc ça va mobiliser la Navy, ça va mobiliser d'autres unités, et ça a quand même un coût important. Donc ici, c'est les idées générales qu'il y a sur le Cape Town Agreement. Alors ce qu'il y a d'intéressant à savoir sur le Cape Town Agreement, c'est essentiellement pour les navires un peu plus grands, c'est-à-dire c'est essentiellement pour les navires de 24 mètres et au-delà. Ça ne considère pas les petits navires. Alors ça, c'est un petit peu problématique aussi, hein, c'est-à-dire que même si on ratifie ça, finalement, ça ne concerne qu'une classe de navires. Cependant, ça a l'avantage de pouvoir vous offrir la possibilité de vérifier les navires quand ils sont dans vos ports, puisque c'est une réglementation internationale, donc les navires étrangers, vous pouvez les vérifier, et ça vous donne plus de pouvoir par rapport aux opérations de ces navires-là. Et c'est aussi intéressant pour votre administration de commencer aussi à vraiment mettre en acte, c'est-à-dire en loi, en réglementation, en directive, un certain nombre d'éléments techniques pour la sécurisation des navires en général. Donc il y a l'idée générale de mise en œuvre des normes, on voit très bien à travers l'état du pavillon et l'état du port, et ça c'est des éléments qui sont très similaires à ce qui se passe au niveau de la marine marchande. Un autre texte qui est entré en vigueur, donc c'est la STCWF. STCWF a eu une grosse update en 2024, et maintenant c'est un texte qui se rapproche énormément de ce qu'est la STCW pour les marins de commerce. Il y a beaucoup plus de similitudes, donc ça va être peut-être plus simple à mettre en œuvre parce que le principe est à peu près le même. Je vais aller très rapidement. Donc il y a l'idée aussi de contrôle sur ce qui se passe, de contrôle sur la formation, s'assurer d'une qualité de formation, une qualité dans la distribution aussi des certificats. et aussi la vérification par les ports de la qualité des marins. Donc on voit ici qu'il y a aussi tout un ensemble d'éléments qui sont intéressants, c'est-à-dire qu'on voit qu'il y a un minimum d'exigences pour la sécurité, de connaissances à la sécurité qui sont exigées pour les marins et tous les marins pêcheurs. Après, on voit qu'il y a une différenciation en termes de formation à travers les différents niveaux qu'ont les marins. C'est-à-dire s'ils sont au niveau de management, donc les officiers supérieurs, les officiers subalternes et les personnes qui sont l'équipage. Et on voit qu'il y a une différenciation après qui se fait, mais il y a au moins un minimum pour tout le monde. Et ça, c'est très intéressant et c'est un changement important. Après, il y a les différents éléments à connaître, ça dépend des fonctions que les personnes auront à bord, etc. Ça se présente comme ça et on voit pour les gens qui sont dans l'enseignement maritime, ils verront très bien que ça ressemble exactement à la STCW. Hein. C'est exactement la même chose, c'est une évolution un petit peu plus réduite, hein, comme d'habitude. Malheureusement, à la pêche, on met toujours plus petit, toujours moins de choses à demander. C'est un peu triste, mais c'est comme ça. Et après, il y a un ensemble d'instruments qui sont non obligatoires, mais qui sont très intéressants. Et c'est là que ça va permettre d'étendre les règles, de développer des règles de sécurité au niveau national sur tous les types de navires. Et c'est là où on voit ces instruments qui sont là. L'idée, c'est que c'est des instruments qui sont volontaires et qui peuvent servir de guide pour développer des cadres réglementaires au niveau national pour la sécurité des navires de pêche de tout type, de toute taille et de toute motorisation. Donc c'est assez intéressant cette possibilité. Et on voit qu'il y a un ensemble de guides qui sont produits en général par les 3 organisations ensemble pour la plupart du temps. Après, certaines, pour des éléments plus particuliers sur les marins, on voit que l'OIT produit son propre système. Mais on voit très bien ici, avec ces éléments, qu'on va couvrir la totalité des navires de pêche dans les aspects de construction et d'opération. Donc il y a vraiment des instruments qui existent pour tous les États à mettre en œuvre, à s'inspirer pour assurer la sécurité en mer de leurs navires. Donc je vais aller très rapidement. De toute façon, vous aurez la totalité des présentations, donc vous pourrez regarder un petit peu ce qu'il y a dedans. Donc voilà, il y a tout ce qui existe. Et on voit très bien que certains sont très bien détaillés sur la construction et ça permet de donner des bons guides pour renforcer les structures de navires pour finalement avoir des navires de plus en plus solides et éviter des problèmes de long terme sur la construction des navires. Donc il y a beaucoup de choses, le design des navires, donc la construction, mais aussi les pratiques en mer, encore du design, suivant les textes. Ici, ce sont des guides pour les États, pour mettre en place. Donc on voit très bien qu'il y a toute une structure qui a été développée par la FAO, l'OIT et l'OMI pour aider les États et un ensemble d'instruments qui peuvent mettre en régulation et comment faire. Donc il y a vraiment un cadre qui peut être facilement récupéré pour développer progressivement la sécurité de la pêche. Mais c'est pour ça que c'est important, hein, le rôle de l'État est extrêmement important. Le rôle de l'administration de la pêche est très important, de l'administration maritime. Encore d'autres, hein, je vais aller vite. Et il y a une multitude d'autres instruments qui existent. Les plus importants, ce sont ceux qu'il y avait avant, mais ceux-là sont aussi intéressants à connaître. En conclusion, il est important de changer de représentation, peut-être s'intéresser aux pêcheurs en tant qu'êtres humains, comme les gens qui vont dans les avions, hein, peut-être les considérer comme les gens riches, ils ont peut-être le droit de vivre aussi, comme les gens riches qui prennent l'avion. Donc ce serait peut-être intéressant de s'intéresser, de parler de ces gens-là et de les considérer comme des personnes qui sont positives pour la société. Mettre en place un ensemble de programmes pour la sécurisation des individus et de leur travail. Il faut toujours se rappeler que la sécurité a un coût, et c'est pour ça que les réglementations sont très importantes. La réglementation est importante, le rôle de l'État est très important pour aider la pêche à s'améliorer. C'est très compliqué hein, pour une pêche qui est établie depuis des décennies dans un certain cadre socio-économique de changer. C'est très difficile. Et c'est là le rôle de l'État, hein, c'est d'aider, d'accompagner les armateurs, d'accompagner les marins-pêcheurs pour avancer. Et s'il n'y a pas cet accompagnement, il y aura une résistance toujours importante de la part des propriétaires et ça va être très long de faire avancer les choses. Donc il y a un cadre international qui est très intéressant, qui est très important et qui permet de couvrir vraiment les navires de toute taille. Hein. Les gens ont tendance à se focaliser sur le Cape Town Agreement, au-delà de 24 mètres, 45 cm, mais il y a un ensemble de documents volontaires qui peuvent être très intéressants pour développer progressivement la réglementation pour tous les navires de toutes les tailles. Ouais, j'arrête, j'ai beaucoup parlé encore. Hein.